doesn't like to learn things.
That's what I said.
In the mic. Let's get it, baby. Are we ready?
Just like some Lil Wayne stuff. Hit the lighter before we start.
Yeah, we ready.
All right, guys, welcome back to the First Take podcast. I'm here with my friend Matt and my friend John. This is Matt's first time. Butterworth, let's give him a hand.
Newbie. Attaboy, Matt.
That's right, Matt.
Glad to be here.
Good to have you.
Matt Purdue is what's your title for Kidman?
Kidman, I'm the preteen associate.
Preteen associate,
Yeah.
so he is here with us part-time on staff. Look, guys, I'm excited to hang out with you tonight. We're filming tonight, so that's kind of weird, but we'll make it work. So we are at the halfway point of the year.
Yeah.
It's summer. It's getting hot. The fishing has slowed down, so you know what that means. It's basically hunting season.
Amen.
That's a fact.
It's basically hunting season. It is right around the corner. So what's y'all's favorite store to get hunting gear from?
Favorite store?
Favorite store.
Everybody buys stuff online now.
Okay, where you order from?
Matt is very bougie about his hunting equipment.
That is one thing.
That
that's
doesn't
the only
surprise
thing
me.
I'm bougie
Dude,
about.
he spends so much money on hunting equipment.
I don't say I'd spend a ton of money, but when I want something,
Let's add it up,
I'm going
dog.
to get it.
We'll start with me. I like Academy. It's cheap,
Yeah.
easy to get to, you know, that sort of thing. Now tell us about REI. And,
No, not REI. You got to go Go Hunt.
There
Go
you
Hunt's
go.
a good one. That's
I've
a good
never heard
website.
of that.
Go Hunt's a really good one for some discounted stuff.
Matt's one of those Sitka guys.
I do not wear Sitka. Opposite of Sitka. Kuyu. You got to go Kuyu, the other side.
Have you heard of that?
I have no idea what we're talking
Dude,
about.
it's like $400 jackets.
Yes, sir, baby. Exposed. All right.
I have two pieces of apparel.
Alex
Okay.
might not know.
Okay.
Do the
She
pockets
knows.
of these jackets come stuffed with cash?
Yes.
Let's see if there's any correlation to this next question. How did you do this year?
Oh, God. There's a direct correlation because your Academy boy had a horrible year. I don't know if
Did you kill anything?
Let's just put it this way. I've seen more deer in the last week
In your backyard?
in my backyard at my new house.
That stings a little bit, doesn't it?
Than
but
I
don't you-
saw all of last hunting season.
Don't you have to hunt, though?
Yeah, you do have to go.
You gotta go.
It's been a rough year, man. It's fine.
John gets cold, and he's like, I'm going to head back.
What about you? You like to hunt moose and all kinds of...
I did get, we got to go on an elk
Wildcats
hunt this
and-
year. I
An
didn't,
elk hunt?
Yeah, we did an elk hunt. I got my brother this year for a hunt.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah, we killed a 6x6 bull in
Yes,
Colorado
sir.
for that. And
Nice.
yeah, that's where the high-end apparel comes in, though. It's not the just because I want it. It's
I got
the
you.
non-cotton stuff for
I got
whenever
you.
you're hiking, and we camped in for 7 days.
Got you.
I'm going to tell you this. Matt's my hunting hero.
I don't know about that.
When my son talks about hunting, I try him to not get to be like me. Have higher aspirations. Try to be like someone who actually kills stuff.
John gets those twice shot deer.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. So,
Somebody's hand-me-downs.
anyway,
Well, my favorite place to shop, and this is going to be our official unpaid sponsor for the week.
unpaid sponsors.
Drum roll. Nichols in DeQuincy.
Oh, Nichols.
That's a good call.
You can bring your wife. You can go find something for both of you. So check that out. Nichols in DeQuincy. Shout out to the Irwin family. Nichols has tons of like trendy stuff too. Have y'all noticed that? Have y'all been there recently?
Yeah.
I haven't been in a while.
Like all the latest and greatest fishing and hunting clothing. They got it. So
Yeah, I mean,
check it out. And decor.
Yeah, think about it. Where can you go get your woodwick candles
That's right.
and your ground blind all at the same place?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And cooking stuff. They upped their game on cooking stuff too.
Yeah, that's true. Like the outdoor cooking stuff,
Yeah.
especially the big pots and all that. I'll tell you this, man. One of my favorite things to do at Nichols is to go where the ground blinds are in the back, get in them, and scare people as they walk by.
You do not. Do you really do that?
Yeah, I do that.
I wouldn't doubt that at all.
Like rando, like just
Just random people. I mean, why would I do it to someone I know?
So when you were a kid,
you liable to
your
get
mom,
beat up in DeQuincy doing that.
when your
That's
mom went
true.
to the store, you hid behind the little rack.
Oh, I
the
would
coat
hide
rack,
inside
and
all the time. Yeah,
You just shout at people.
for sure.
Yeah.
With
Anyway.
that being said, speaking of trendy clothes and such, this is going to be our awesome transition into what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah.
There is a growing trend in the last, I'd say, 10 to 20-ish years, based on some statistics of young people leaving the church from late teens to 20-ish, 29 years old. Our stats are going to be from 18 to 29. So tonight, I want us to talk about why that's the case. Like, why? What are we doing wrong as a church, or are we doing something wrong as a church? How do we respond to this trend? Do you think it's accurate? And we'll just dive right into it. So I did a lot of reading here recently in a book called "You Lost Me," and producer Butterworth will put that in the link in the description. But the president of Barna Research Group, right? So have y'all heard of Barna Research Group?
Yeah.
Anyways, they do a ton of research on all different, types of things. And the president wrote this book, and he put a bunch of stats in there. And I'm gonna read you guys a few of them, see what you think.
Okay.
So 59% of young people with a Christian background report that they had or have dropped out of attending church after going regularly. 57% say they are less active in church today compared to when they were age 15. 38% say they have gone through a period when they significantly doubted their faith, and 32% describe a period when they felt like leaving their parents' faith. So what do you guys think about that? Does that surprise you at all, or were those numbers shocking or no?
Yeah, so like the numbers on people leaving, they're about in line with what I would have thought. The number about them doubting is actually a little lower than what I would think. I wonder if people aren't really being honest about, because it's hard to say, yeah, I've doubted my faith. That's a tough thing to admit to, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people say they believe in God and not necessarily
know what they're saying.
Or following their faith, right? They're just
yeah.
I believe in God. Like if you look at the statistics, nationwide of people who believe in God, you're going to get a high statistic. But
yeah, professing Christianity is way higher than practicing Christianity.
That's
for
right.
Sure. But yeah, I think it's pretty alarming. I mean, when you think about it, as a dad who has some kids coming up, it's one thing that I think about, like how do I build a faith in them that is going to be lasting, that's going to stick. There's a book called Sticky Faith that I read that's really good when it comes to that for young people. Producer Butterworth put that in the comments too. But I'll say it's a thing that I do think about a lot. Like how am I going to keep my kids in love with Jesus and in love with their faith and that sort of thing.
So, I mean, obviously we value the next generation, right? And as a church, we have to value that. And so I think it's important that we try and provide some clarity on this. I want to start with you guys. Both of you have a similar but different experience of how you maybe have walked away from your faith a little bit. Can we get a brief rundown of what that was like for each of you?
Yeah. Matt, go first.
Yeah, so for me, mine was I did grow up in church. I grew up, we went to church, but it was a little different. I didn't see my parents going to church. So my mom would bring me, drop me off. I would be there at church, but I was very involved growing up. But once I got saved, it was more of you're saved, we're done. You're going to come to church, you're going to do your thing. There was no more discipleship on that end. So when I got done, I graduated high school, went to college, it was like, there's a whole new world and no one to disciple me on this. I didn't have somewhere to go back to, not that tradition of where I had always gone, all these people that I'd always known, because I moved to a new town to go to college.
Yeah.
And then from there, it was just, I still believe in God, but it was hypocritical faith. It was, I believe in God, but I'm going to live my own life. When I got into college, I'm going to live the college life. And I had a girlfriend. I had all those things that are going to go on when you have in college that can kind of lead you in a different way. And it can draw you in that way if you're not sitting there discipled and you're not ready to, or mature enough spiritually to handle what the world's going to throw at you, because the world's going to throw everything they can at you to draw you away from those traditions, those values, those things that God puts in you or instills in you. And if you're not prepared to go to those battles, you're going to lose those battles by yourself.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what it was for me. I was somebody who still said they believed in God, still claimed the faith, but wasn't living the way that I said that I was. Wasn't living the way that I should have been living for who I said that I was and who I said that I answered to.
Yeah. So how old were you when you became a Christ follower?
I was 9 when I became a Christ follower.
Gotcha.
So I was really young. And
so there was pretty much nothing after that.
Yeah,
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much it was just, you come up through church, you go through
up.
youth, you show up, you do your part, but you're a believer. So there was no more discipleship.
Checking boxes.
So, that's right. There was no more discipleship to go to that next step of, okay, how do you become growing in your faith? How do you become mature in your faith? How do you become that next step? I never did see that.
Yeah.
What about you, John?
Yeah, mine's pretty similar in a lot of ways, but maybe a little different. I was saved at 8, grew up in church, family very involved in church. Dad was the Sunday school director. We cleaned the church at our first church we went to. Like, we were there all the time. And but that doesn't mean that I was being discipled as a kid or even as a teenager. And so my faith in my teenage years was really like a roller coaster. If there were moments where I would be really being discipled. Let's say I got into a good, Sunday school class or something like that, and I could feel that. And then I finally got a good youth pastor when I was a junior in high school, and that guy became my mentor. And that's where I saw like the calling on my life, to ministry happened during that time, and it was a really, really important time in my life. But the world distracted me, came calling. I went off to college, got distracted by a lot of things. And then during college, the guy who was my mentor ended up messing up, and he fell into some sin. And I was working at a church at the time, and the church that I was working at, was a great church, but, church work ain't always easy. And when you're young, you're really immature. Like, I was super immature at 20 years old when it came to some of this stuff. And so what happened is I go through all that, and my mentor falls, and I completely was done. I was done with church. I was done with all of it. And so I spent the next decade, and it was right after me and Amber got married. So the first, 10 years of our marriage, I was completely disenchanted with the church, didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I'm gonna be honest, man, we didn't attend very much until, we started having our children, and we did what a lot of people do. They come back when they have kids, like, oh crap, I gotta get them in church, that sort of thing. And so that was sort of my story, really like a roller coaster ride through my teenage years.
So let me ask you this: like, you mentioned that youth pastor, that guy. Like, would you say that you had like placed an element of your faith in him?
Yeah. So I think, one of the mistakes when I think about those numbers of people leaving the church, one of the mistakes that I see churches make is they elevate men to a place that they cannot hold. They put men in the place of Jesus a lot, and even sometimes because these men are, we love these men that lead us, and we respect them, and we think, the world of them. But when you put somebody on a pedestal, when you put someone on a throne that they were never meant to take, like the throne of your heart, in a lot of ways, which is what I had done with this guy. Like, I really put him on a pedestal in a place in my life that he had no business occupying. And so when he fell, it's not that my faith went away, but like the foundation was definitely shaken. And I, looking back, I can look at that and say, yeah, you were looking to the wrong guy, buddy. Like you were looking to a man.
A human.
And I think that's what we do a lot. And sometimes it's on purpose, sometimes it's not on purpose, but we do get people to look to men way too much when the only one that we should be looking to as the writer and perfecter of our faith is Jesus.
Right.
So
gotcha. And so the book that I mentioned, You Lost Me, mentions 3 different kind of types of people that struggle with this, and it calls them nomads, prodigals, and exiles. And so I'll just define them briefly. Nomads are people who walk away but still consider themselves Christian, right? And so they walk away from maybe church attendance or spiritual practices, but still consider themselves Christian. Prodigals being they walk away and completely just dismantle, completely dismantle their faith, and maybe for a time period consider themselves not Christian at all.
Yeah.
And then there's exiles who feel invested in faith but feel stuck between culture and church. And so every story that I've heard, I have friends that have dealt with some form of this, that are, close to my age, if not, the same age as me. And in all of those stories that I've heard, they're all different, right? And so they all have different backgrounds, and they all carry different baggage. And so based off of your experience, like, why do you feel that it's so important to approach people struggling with this type of thing with such care?
Oh, because you can easily push them away, right?
Yeah.
They're going to feel attacked. And if somebody's going to feel attacked, they're going to flee. And so for me to see that, if somebody's going to come and attack you and say, look, what the heck are you doing? Instead of saying, hey man, have you thought about this? Have you thought about what you're doing when you're doing these things, or why you're choosing to live that way? Or have you thought about other these things that we know that God has shown us to do and has paved the way for us to do, or that we've been privileged to do? That's one thing I like to talk about a lot, is that don't live beneath your privilege, right? You're privileged to have God to lead the way. You're privileged to have God fight those battles. So when you go through something tough that may lead you to fall away, or you go through some big life change where you may not have those same values, or you may not have those same traditions that you have, make sure you stay on that path. So to go at them as soft as possible, to make sure that you're not going to push them to the world, right? Because that's exactly where you're going to push them. If you're going to push them off the edge, you're going to push them to everything that can pull them the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, when we're talking with people who are going through that, and I can remember whenever I was going through it, when really Amber and I were going through it together. I remember going back to church for the first time, and there was this guy. He was the interim youth pastor. It was after my youth pastor had left and all that kind of stuff. And this guy knew me from the university because he was a guy in that realm. And I can remember us walking in, and he saw us, he knew us, he knew Amber and I, and he said, "Man, nice of y'all to finally show up." And that killed me, and it killed Amber. And like, honestly, it made
How old were you at the time?
We were like 23. Amber was older than I was, but we weren't
23 right now.
Yeah. So I'll tell you this: like, we didn't go back for a while after that, and that there's still, I'm over it, but there's still some pain associated with that. And like, when I think about that, that's what I think about. That's just him wanting to prove a point. He didn't have any care for me and Amber in that moment. And I think that's what Matt is saying. Like, when people are going through these things, wanting to be right or wanting to get it right are two totally different things. Like, yeah, you can prove a point and you can, beat someone in submission, or you can think about, hey, how can I really love this person and show them that there's more.
Right.
And like, let's maybe call them to that more instead of making them feel like crap about themselves, which happens just too often. And sometimes it's out of a joke. I think he might have been joking, but it was just the wrong way to say.
That's something we have to be careful about, though, because I'm the first person to be able to do that. I'll mess with somebody. I'll give somebody a hard time, but you don't know what they're going through that may
not
be pushing
me.
them in the other.
That's not usually who.
Of course not.
No, just kidding. I have that.
That's why you're not in our small group anymore.
Yeah.
So, do you guys have, maybe John, an experience where someone showed you that care and that grace, that sort of gentleness?
Yeah.
That maybe drew you back in?
It actually happened here. Bo Guidry works here on the staff, and this was years after that experience at the church. And we had kind of gone to church a little bit, here and there, but I had started my business here in Lake Charles. But I just so happened to see Bo at a grocery store back in Youngsville. And Bo was, I hadn't seen Bo in I worked for Bo when I was in college at a church, right? I hadn't seen Bo in 8 years. And we met up in a grocery store parking lot in Youngsville, Louisiana. And Bo was just very kind. Didn't talk to me about why we hadn't talked. Didn't talk to me about where I had been, what I'd, messed up.
Quick question to clarify on your story. When you left, were you working for Bo at the time or no?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But Bo wasn't the issue.
Gotcha. No. Right. Yeah. But
let's make that very clear.
Yeah. No, I got you. I'm just clarifying, even more the length that he went to show.
Well, yeah, when Bo tells this story, it's a hard thing for him because I walked away from a church that Bo saw me walk away. He saw me walk away from the ministry. And so it hits home for Bo. And so Bo saw me in that parking lot, and instead of saying, hey man, why are you doing this with your life? And just super sweet, super nice, super kind, and invited me to church in Moss Bluff because I told him I was working in Lake Charles. He said, man, you should come on a Wednesday night because I was there during the week. Come on a Wednesday night, just hang out with me Wednesday afternoon, and let's just go to church together. And there was no strings attached, nothing to it.
Yeah.
And I came to church here, and I literally texted Amber from the service and said, I found our church in Lake Charles when we moved here, and the rest is history.
Wow.
That's how it happened. So, yeah, kindness goes a long way, and somebody really caring for what your future is going to be is super important.
For sure.
That's crazy.
For sure.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I have somewhat of a similar story, but a little bit different yet again. So we moved over here. I started my day job, my career over here. We moved to Moss Bluff from Texas. So, God's country over on that side.
Get out of here.
But
Stuck up people from Texas. Dude.
Exactly. Look, a Texas person's the one we're talking about in this too. So,
That's true. Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
But so we tried a few different churches around because we got married. We're living over here. And I said, look, I really do want to try to get back into church, try to get back into my faith and the things that I know that I should be doing. And we tried a few different churches, and then we ended up coming to First Moss Bluff, and we tried it that day. And after church, my wife left her purse at church. We get home. She realizes she left it. I'm like, how'd you not realize it when we got to the car? But we get home. So ends up some girl friends her on Facebook. Turns out to be Lauren. And so she friends her on Facebook because she had found her ID. Shout out to Lauren Fox, yeah.
Lauren Louvier.
Who is now a
bro.
Louvier.
Louvier. I'm sorry.
Sis-in-law.
I'm sorry that I missed
Get that Texas out of here.
Yeah, I made the mistake of calling her Fox, and I'm sorry that she's related to John.
Yeah, her name in my phone is still Lauren Fox.
Yeah, I
Same.
think it is in mine too.
Same for me. But
Am I the only one that's changed it?
You would be that guy.
Butterworth, you would be the one.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
that's hilarious. But so she friended Alex on Facebook. That's my wife's name. Shout out to her as well.
Yeah.
And so she was like, okay, you have your purse. So we came up to the church to meet her. And when we came up to the church, she was like, hey, we have a small group. Why don't y'all come join us? At least just come see what small group's about. And Alex talked about it. Alex had never been to something like that before. She really didn't grow up in the same faith that I grew up in. And so from there, I said, look, we need to go try it out. We don't know a lot of people here other than the people that I work with. These are people in our community. Let's at least go see. So Lauren first showed us that love that John's talking about and said, look, we like y'all. Why don't y'all just come? Actually, they didn't even know if they liked us or not. They were just like, look, come over.
Random people.
Random people come over, have some free food. I didn't know it was going to be John and Bo cooking the food, but
Yeah.
it was pretty good food. They said, look, come eat with us, have a Bible study, come to small group and just see what it's about. And from there, we went there and everybody in there showed us love. Everybody in there was welcoming. Everybody in there was showing us all the things that showed us who Jesus was. It wasn't they were showing us who they were. It was showing us Jesus. And
was
that was
cool.
really what pointed us back to it.
Yeah, it gave you a way back in your journey. But Alex also got saved.
That's right. It led
for
my
all
wife to
that.
Christ.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it actually led her to Christ. Which
yeah.
is
She
Wow.
She got saved later that year. So
Yeah.
that was in March of 17, and
Yeah.
then she got saved in September, October of 17.
it's incredible.
How old were you guys around there?
22. Yeah,
Wow. That's crazy because your wife left her purse.
just because she left her purse. That's right.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to just rattle y'all's brain on like, how do you feel like and I know that we've already mentioned the idea of showing care, but what are some other ways that we as a body of believers, and I believe that this is a collective effort of people of all ages, can prevent people, maybe just in general, from walking away from the faith, walking away from being a part of the body?
I think one of the reasons people walk away is when followers of Christ don't act like Christ. It's an unfortunate thing that in a lot of churches, you hear these things, phrases like worship wars, or you hear politics, or you hear, some of these things that enter into church bodies. And those are not things that are of Christ. Those are things that are of the world. And so I think one of the things that we can do to keep people from walking away is, make it about Jesus and not about like our preferences, not about like what we would want to see out of things. So I think about worship. Like I have a particular style of worship that I like, that maybe more than another. But if I'm making it about that and enough to fight with someone over it, that's going to turn a lot of people away. And I think that has turned a lot of people away. If I am, maneuvering and trying to find control in the church, I think that turns people away. And young people, I know from when I was doing student ministry a few years ago, this generation that we're talking about, and really I think this goes for anybody. When you're involved in a body of Christ, you're looking to make a difference. You're looking to have an impact in this world that's bigger than yourself. And if you think the people around you are getting bogged down in the bull, like stuff that doesn't matter,
Right.
you're gonna pull that ripcord pretty quick. You're gonna get out of there. Like you're not gonna want. And the bad thing is that they're not pulling the ripcord on a church necessarily. The unfortunate thing is that they're pulling the ripcord on church as a whole, and really they're pulling it on Jesus. And that's the issue. Is the unfortunate thing is that we're causing people to judge Jesus based off of our bad behavior. and I would like to see us stop that.
No joke. I agree with you on that. And I think, going more to that, I think another thing is be real.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing for me when we came to small group.
Yeah.
Was people weren't real back where I was from. Everybody wanted to put on that mask. Everyone wanted to put on that face that life is going great and that's because I'm a Christian, right? And that they don't have their faults or their flaws. And that's how you idolize somebody and they end up falling whenever you find out the truth, right?
Yeah.
That's what's going to push people away. So first time we go to small group, people are talking about real stuff that they're struggling with because we all fall short.
Yeah.
And because we're falling short, we shouldn't be on that pedestal. And so we should be putting Jesus there and saying, look, he's the reason that I'm not falling further.
Right. So like as someone who's, 23, young adult, has friends that are dealing with this, that have walked away from the faith, that have walked away and come back. I think that we live in a culture that is so bombarded with things that are false. And not only false, but things that claim one thing and present itself differently, or claim to value one thing and present something different. And so I think that my age group, my generation, your generation specifically, is tired of anything that is not legit.
Yeah,
like
fake.
for a lack of a better way of saying it, that is just not that's not authentic, that doesn't care about the main thing that it claims to care about.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't agree with you guys more. Like if we as a body of believers are not making Christ likeness the main thing, we're going to lose a lot of people.
100%.
That were raised in the faith.
Yeah, and it's not even that they're intellectually smarter than generations before them, but they do have access to more information than any generation ever.
True.
Right? Like we are bombarded, like you said, with so much information, and so they're really good at spotting fraud. Like they can see it from a mile away. They can say, yeah, that dude's a fraud. That dude is so fake. He's not really who he says he is. And so, yeah, I'll just talk about our church a little bit. This isn't about our church, but one of the things I love about our church is that we got a bunch of dudes around here. Like, just thinking of the guys that I'm in different groups with and friend groups, like they're just real. And I know the women are the same way. Like they kind of let it all hang out. They don't claim to be anything that they're not. And that's what makes it pretty special. So I agree with Matt. The authenticity goes a long way to keeping people from bouncing.
And that brings new people to it too. Instead of just keeping people from bouncing, like my wife grew up in a completely different realm. She grew up seeing none of that. But everybody was fake. And she wasn't used to seeing anything like that. My wife's as real as it gets. She's going to lay it all on the table for you. John will tell you. She'll tell you how it is and tell you exactly what she believes.
Even when she is so wrong. Alex, I hope you listen to this part. Even when she is so wrong.
Hey, bro, at least she's committed. At least she's committed.
She is bought in.
John, she is never wrong.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
I'm going to get slapped when I get home for that. No, but she didn't see that. She wasn't used to seeing that. When she saw the people being real here, that was something completely different to her that drew her in, because that authenticity does bring people in, because that's what people want, that realness, that truth that Jesus brings.
Right.
And it draws people to you.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Like, I pretty much grew up in church and was in small groups, Sunday school, whatever, corporate worship, all growing up. And then whenever I started coming here, that was one of the first things that I noticed, like, oh, like these are just people.
Yeah.
And they're not trying to be, some perfect Christian. And it completely opened my eyes to like what following Jesus and being in community actually looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually wanted to bring up one other thing, Seth.
Go for it.
As I was thinking about it, I think one of the things that people are looking forward to, or people are running from, is sometimes when we get involved in some churches, truth is sort of on a sliding scale, and you don't know where to find it. And like, I think a lot, we sometimes we make a mistake about making our faith very humanistic, where it's like me focused. And, it's not focused on Jesus. And so we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I do think that that's a big reason people get disenchanted with it, because it's hard to really give your life, which is what we're called to do. Like surrender our will, die to self, all those types. That's hard to do on something that you come to realize is not worth it. And so when we make there unfortunately out there's a lot of faith stories that are about what you can get out of your faith. What the earthly blessings,
almost prosperity gospel,
the prosperity
right?
type stuff, and the healing and all this kind of stuff. And sometimes prosperity does come for some people, and healing does come for some people, but it's never guaranteed based on like our actions, right?
We're promised goodness in eternity. We're not promised goodness here.
Not here. But I think whenever we make this thing about that stuff and not about surrendering our lives and our will to Jesus and following him with everything that we have, I think people become like, they start to realize that, and they're out. They're like, yeah, that is not worth following, because it never really stacks
It's
up.
disingenuous, right? I mean, it's not going to draw people to it because it's not real.
Yeah.
It's just another thing that's fake, right? If you're going to put that front that if you follow Jesus, then these things are going to happen, and then they don't start to happen, then yet again, they're finding another reason to turn away from the faith.
So we really have to major on truth, like
Right.
just always.
Not just that, but like, let's be real. You talked about we're promised the goodness in eternity. Well, the goodness that's in eternity, it's not the streets of gold. It's Jesus.
That's a fact.
It's Jesus. And so like, I can experience that here. And so the goodness in eternity here is my relationship. I mean, the goodness on earth is my relationship with Jesus. And so, attaching your faith to Jesus, and you mentioned it earlier, like, it can't be a man. It can't be a woman. It can't be an institution.
Earthly pleasure, anything.
It has to be attached to the person of Jesus.
Yeah, 100%.
That's well put.
So I want to end with this. I think that, you mentioned, John, about our faith being about us and kind of having that narcissistic ideology of things. And I think that my generation is probably the worst at it. I'm going to that's just an opinion. I don't have any stat to back that up. That's just a generalization. But I think that we probably struggle with that in culture because of what the world teaches us that and what media feeds us, that everything is about me getting mine and me self-help and all of these types of things.
Self-promotion.
Yeah. And so I think that with all of that and with the state of the world that we live in today, there's kind of a stigma that, like, man, young Christians are just falling apart. And like the Christian faith is just going down the drain. And so honestly, like, as a 23-year-old that has grown up in the church that loves not just this church, but the church, like all my friends, all my family, like everything has revolved around church my entire life. It's really discouraging, like as a young person to hear people say that, both my age and older, and to think that like there's no hope there. I just want to give you guys some stats and let me hear what you think. So the stats say that 30% of young Christians are more excited about church than at any time in their lives. 41% say that they desire a more traditional faith rather than a hip, falsified version of Christianity. And 42% say that they are very concerned about their generation leaving the church. Does that shock you at all or no?
I'll talk as the old guy on the panel this week.
Okay. You're not
the old guy.
Are you atting somebody? Are you tagging somebody?
I mean, let's face it. Last few weeks,
John, don't make that face.
Really old dudes here. So when I hear the older, my generation and above talking down about the generations behind us, I like to remind them, hey, you raised them. So take some ownership in that. Like, you're part of this. You raised these kids that you're downing and that you're saying that aren't there. But I also like to remind them that the ones that are sold out are more sold out than almost anyone I know. The young adults that are really getting after it, or
they're all in, right?
It ain't
it's
fake.
all in.
Yeah, it ain't fake. It's all on the table, and they are genuine. They are open. They are honest, and they are real. And they're not worried about storing up earthly treasures, for this kingdom, for their kingdom here on earth. They're worried about the kingdom of God. They're less materialistic than my generation, than myself even. They're less, they're just going for it in a lot of ways. And so honestly, those stats don't surprise me because this generation that's coming up behind us, your generation, and even the one behind you, you guys are really focused on people.
Yeah.
And yeah, the trap for your generation is that self-absorption, but it's because of what has been created for you. It's that social web that has been created for you. But when you can get out of that, when you can bust out of that, bro, your generation is unreal.
Yeah.
And that's really how I feel. So,
But I think, our generation is becoming authentic in love, right? That's the big thing that they're becoming authentic in is God said it best. He said, there's no greater love than to die for your friends. And so you're saying that they're willing to, those new people that are all in and willing to give up everything for others to come to know Christ. And that's what draws people in is they're truly loving others. They're not just going and saying, okay, you come to church and the church will take care of it.
yeah.
No, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
And that relationship is what's key. When we start to love people, and we live in a world that's digital, right? We live in a world where everybody is tied to their screens. When somebody goes out of their way to talk to a person and to spend time and devote their time to them.
Yeah. It goes that much further.
It does, especially in today's generation, because everybody's tied to being away. We had COVID, we had quarantine where everybody was, digital. Everything was away from each other. And now people are still seeking. People are still wanting to go and talk in person about those things. I think that's more love.
Yeah. And this isn't to like down my generation or the generations above me.
Not at all.
But it is to warn us, just because we don't understand a group of people doesn't mean that they're doing it wrong. You know what I mean? And so sometimes lack of understanding can cause us to make assumptions and judgments that are really not true, and it does lead to some discouragement. And I mean, the bad thing is that our generations were being done that to by the generations before us,
Right?
And their generation, this is just a thing. Like you kind of get to that get off my lawn mentality later on in life. I mean, it's just kind of what happens. But
and it goes back to what Brian said maybe a couple of weeks ago. Was it the closed hand versus open hand things? Right? The closed hand things are what should matter, and I think all generations are getting that part right.
100%.
Right? The closed hand things are what should matter, and open hand stuff, the way we live, the way we dress, a few of those different things, they don't really matter as long as Jesus-centered is where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to end with this. Just a quick summary of both of y'all of how God changed your life in your 20s. And I know we've heard a little bit about it, but like since then, what was life like following maybe your initial journey back to the church?
You want to take it first? Or you want
Sure,
me?
I'll go first. For me, I'll go pretty quick. The phrase that always comes to my mind when I think about that is that God was always faithful even when I wasn't, and I strayed very far, but He never moved, and so I'm just so thankful because I think about the road that I was headed down. When I thought I was happy, I was full of misery, and He has restored the years that were stolen from me by my own pride, by my own selfishness, by my own ego, and He has just blessed me beyond what anything I could ever deserve. But like, that's Jesus, right? That's grace. And so when I think about my 20s, I think, those are tough years, and I wish it wouldn't have happened, but it really sort of has made me who I am today. I was sort of a jerk when I was in my early 20s.
Right.
And I can still be
You
a
were?
jerk at times. But I'm way more empathetic today, and I think it's because I screwed up a lot in my 20s, and the Lord brought me back, restored me, and made me new.
Man, that's good. That's really good. But I don't know how I follow that. But for me, God
should have gone first.
But for me, whenever I got back into my faith, it was kind of organic, right? I dove back in, and it felt like it was where I was always supposed to be because God had always been there chasing me. God had been seeking me all that time whenever I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. But from then, I saw the world attack me in a few different ways. I had an illness that attacked me. I had my wife who was
You talking about post-Cambodia?
Post-Cambodia, yeah. Post-Cambodia, I got diabetes.
Matt
right?
almost died after coming back from our Cambodia mission trip.
That boy got the sugars.
Lost 30 pounds. Got the sugars. Yeah, I lost 30 pounds in like 2 weeks.
Bro, 30 pounds on you is like
a lot.
400 on a normal person.
I need to lose 30 like tomorrow. But anyway.
But yeah, lost 30 pounds in 2 weeks. Ended up diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. But at the same time, saw my wife, come to faith. And then after that, we're trying to have a family, and the doctors are saying they don't understand why we can't conceive. And 5 years later, we see the fruition of that, and we have a daughter now.
Wow.
And I've just seen God come through time and time again, even though the world's attacking, even though that things have been bad. No matter what in the world has been bad, my faith has been great, and my joy has never been as high as it's been since I came back. So
that's awesome, man. I can't help but think about how, I've always heard this from different pastors, that good and evil run on parallel tracks. And so just as much as you think this generation may be falling apart, preacher always talks about how things are actually falling into place. And I can't help but believe that God is still working and doing amazing things in young people, not just in this church, but in churches across the nation. And like we see, what God did in y'all's 20s and, what he's continuing to do in your life because of maybe some foundation and groundwork that was laid in that time frame. And so I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, I do.
for sure.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up for tonight. If you like this content, hit the like button, subscribe. We'll be back next week for another First Take podcast. I think we had a great time. Give it up for Matt and John.
Attaboy, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
The rookie.
All right.
Just saying, you talked about being in our 20s. I'm still in my 20s. John,
Yeah, but
you're a little past, right?
out.
You're a little removed.
Yeah, I'm gone. Bye, everybody. See ya.
See you later.
Bye.